Every teacher wants to be successful in helping their students grow and learn. That's the whole point of being a teacher, is to see your students excel. What if I told you that we know the very best, tried and true, research based way to ensure the success of you and your students? It's a method that works with all subject matters, all student populations, including those with disabilities, all settings, and all age levels. Direct instruction is a model that has been studied since the 1960s, and the results show over and over that it works. Stockard and Wood out of the University of Oregon published their meta analysis of direct instruction research, and they said, it is clear that students make sense of and interpret the information that they are given, but their learning is enhanced only when the information presented is explicit, logically organized, and clearly sequenced. To do anything less shirks the responsibility of effective instruction. Hmm, They don't leave a lot of room for question, do they? Madeline Hunter was an American educator, principal, and author, named on the top 100 influential women of the 20th century, whose work in education was prominent in the 1970s and 80s. Her influence has stood the test of time. She developed both an instructional model and a lesson plan framework that was based on the tenets of direct instruction. Let's start with her instructional model, or the how to teach part of her advice to teachers. There are three elements that Hunter says should always be part of any direct instruction lesson. Modeling is the act of having the teacher demonstrate the learning target. If you're teaching how to hold a paintbrush correctly, you hold the brush. And if you're teaching how to write an essay, you demonstrate that and walk students through each part of your thinking and writing. If you're teaching where to turn on your homework, you grab some homework and walk it over to the turn in bin. Dr. Hunter said that we must model or demonstrate each task we want students to master. During a lesson, she encourages us to check for understanding often. We should be asking questions, asking for nods, taking questions throughout our instruction. Just like a parent constantly checks on their new baby, teachers should be constantly checking on the understanding of their students as they move through each element of the lesson. Lastly, Dr. Hunter says that we should take the information we get from checking or monitoring and we should adjust our lesson in the moment. If we ask questions and the response shows that there's confusion, we should offer another example or draw a different picture or demonstrate another way. Additionally, if the response from our students shows that they've already understood, we can skip the additional examples and move ahead. Monitoring and adjusting suggests that we are connected to our students as they learn and making changes to our instruction to make that learning even more efficient and powerful. Dr. Hunter is most well known for her lesson plan format that has 7 distinct elements: the objective, anticipatory set, input or procedure, guided practice, independent practice, assessment, and closure. We'll go in depth with each of those in just a minute. First, it's important that you understand how Dr. Hunter built scaffolding right into her lesson plan model. It's quite brilliant, really. The scaffolding model, called Gradual Release of Responsibility, is one that is fully implemented in a correctly designed Hunter lesson plan. The beginning of the lesson requires significant teacher energy, but throughout the lesson, that energy transfers to the student. By the end of the lesson, the students are doing most of the work with very little teacher support. If you were teaching a lesson on how to brush your teeth, the teacher would start by showing the tools and demonstrating the steps while the students watch. Then the teacher might do it again or demonstrate brushing the teeth of a doll and ask the students to shout out what the teacher should do next. Next, the teacher might hand out giant plastic toothbrushes with shaving cream and laminated faces of smiling, toothy children to small groups. And the teacher would call out each step while the students worked together to brush the teeth on the picture. Lastly, each child would have their own brush, shaving cream, and laminated picture, and each child would talk to themselves through the steps and demonstrating teeth brushing, while the teacher circulates and helps as needed. Did you see how the teacher gradually became less influential as the students gradually took on more responsibility for the learning? This is the backbone of a Hunter lesson plan. Okay, let's talk through the 7 parts of the Hunter lesson plan. First, Hunter says that we should plan the objective of the lesson. I think if Hunter were alive today, she'd agree that learning target is a good synonym. She'd encourage teachers to write these in student-friendly terms, like an I can statement, and share it early in the lesson so students knew what they were supposed to be learning. The anticipatory set is a short introduction or attention-getting segment that allows the teacher to energize the students and collect a bit of information about the topic at hand. This is a good time to link the learning to relevant pop culture or provide context that links the learning to students' lives. Asking students what they know about tigers before starting the lesson on predators gives the teacher great information about where to go quickly and where to slow down in the upcoming lesson. Be careful, new teachers. A common mistake is to put too much energy or time into this portion of the lesson. This is just the appetizer, and you still want students to engage and be interested in the main entree that's yet to come. Ending the anticipatory set with your learning target is a great way to move into your lesson. By the end of the lesson today, you'll be able to say, I can explain 4 characteristics of predators. The input or procedure section is the center of the direct instruction model. This is the part of the lesson where you have the information or skill that you're modeling, explaining, and passing on to your students in a step-by-step explicit way. To be clear, there are other good instructional strategies like problem-based learning or inquiry-based instruction, where the teacher would allow students to discover their learning. This is not direct instruction. In the Hunter lesson, the teacher teaches overtly and concretely to pass the knowledge to their students. Some teachers will fill this section of the lesson plan template with a script, while others find that bullet points are sufficient. Be sure to fully explain your definitions, your questions, and your examples. This section should be dense with information. According to the gradual release of responsibility model, this is the heaviest teacher portion of the lesson. The practice sections, both guided practice and independent practice, are just that, practice. Now that the teacher has demonstrated and explicitly taught, the students will get their chance to try. Guided practice often has 2 stages. First, the students help the teacher demonstrate at least one more time before they work with partners or groups to try it themselves. During guided practice, the teacher is highly attentive and involved in supporting the practice so that students do not practice incorrectly. Some skills require many guided practice activities before students are skilled enough to try the work on their own. Independent practice is the part of the lesson where students are most involved and the teacher is hopefully only watching and intervening the very least. Quite often, independent practice is started in the classroom and then assigned as homework for students to complete on their own. It's important that independent practice is not offered until the teacher can be certain that students will practice with the least chance of error. Assessment is the part of the lesson plan when the teacher explains how these learning targets will be measured. Sometimes they're measured right in the lesson of the very same day, but more often they're measured in future lessons or in assessments that come after the learning has expanded or cemented. Having a plan for assessment is all that is required in this section of the lesson plan, although wise teachers will have at least one informal, formative measure to confirm that students are on the right track. Remember, checking for understanding? This is an example of that. Closure is the last element of the Hunter lesson plan, and it's the part that is most often missed when teachers are observed by their mentors or principals. Closure is much like the anticipatory set flipped on its head. It's the closing credits music to the lesson. No matter how far you got or didn't get in the lesson, taking the last 5 minutes to wrap up what you did finish is important. Ask for a few volunteers to shout out concepts that show that they understand the learning target. Hey kids, I'd like to hear from our 4 different people before we move on. What are 4 qualities of predators that we've learned today? Here again are all of the elements that are part of the Hunter instructional model and lesson plan for direct instruction. A few things to note. Direct instruction is not the only way to teach, and in some cases, depending on the learning target or the content, it won't be as effective as other ways. However, research has shown through replicated study after study that direct instruction is highly effective. As a new teacher, this is by far the best lesson plan model you can start with because it will get you far. Also, it would be wrong of me not to tell you that some people hold the misconception that direct instruction is a teacher-centered model that's boring. I can tell you that isn't true. Boring, teacher-centered lesson plans happen when teachers don't plan for that gradual release of responsibility within the Hunter plan. If you are always focused on how to create a situation where students are becoming more and more engaged with less and less support, the Hunter plan with direct instruction can be a very positive experience for students because in the end, they learn. Lastly, for those that say that the Hunter plan is too long and involved for the average teacher to work through at the daily pace required of modern teachers, I say you're probably right. However, the way that you'll become an expert, veteran teacher is by putting in the time and effort now to perfect your basic skills, and the Hunter plan is that. It's a hammer in your teacher toolbox. I promise that you'll be glad you learned it on a deep level. Also, once it's part of your teacher's psyche, there are ways to simplify it. Check out Norm Eng's blog on the one sentence lesson plan. You're going to recognize it, and although it won't suffice when your principal observes you, the efficient process for working through the Hunter lesson elements is a winner for sure. Happy lesson planning!